Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome on this Three Wide Wednesday here on the Fins Faithful podcast. Dolphins obviously sitting at 1-4 after that collapse in Carolina last Sunday. Still trying to wrap my head around that one, but there's a ton of answers now that are surrounding this organization, this team, and we're kind of going to dive in today and kind of how to end this vicious cycle. I like to call it the merry-go-round of mediocrity that we've been in the last 25 years. That hasn't given us much back, so we're going to dive into all that. Plus more stuff. You never know what we'll get into. And then, we're live on YouTube with you guys. So make sure you guys drop those likes, the thumbs up, this little bell to subscribe. Help support us here. And you get notified when we go live and we bring you all this Miami Dolphins content. In the chat, we love when the chat's lit up and all the questions. And also, Jason, the video, under the video in the description, all the comments after the show, these guys are much smarter than I am. So I love reading them and all that good stuff. So we appreciate it. This show's for the fans today, though. This is for us. All right. So let me bring in. I'm not only joined by, as always, my co-host and co-pilot, Mr. Jason Sarney. We have Dante Collinelli, friend of the program, back on. Dante is a managing copy editor from A to Z Sports. He's a deputy editor on Dolphins on SI. Among other things, you can catch him with Alan Poupart on All Dolphins podcasts. About an hour after the game, they do great stuff over there. Gentlemen, good evening. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be back. It's been a few months. I think last time I was on was maybe preseason post-draft stuff. So it's been a while.
Yeah. Jason, how you doing?
I'm fine. Doing great. All's well.
All right. I want to start off here because this is kind of like, sometimes Jason, I like to get things off my chest, right? To start a show. So I'm going to get a few things off my chest just to start off to set the tone here. I've been a fan of this team for many years. Like so many of you guys watching right now. And to me, forget the money we spent. It's the time that we invested that matters most. The Dolphins have been with me through my highs and my lows in life, like many of you guys. And honestly, we haven't got back much in return. And I'm at the point where enough is enough. This cycle of disappointment has to end. Stephen Ross, you've upgraded, built a beautiful stadium. You brought in F1, and you turn a profit. But now it's time to invest that energy into what matters most to us, the product on the field. The fans deserve it. We love this team, maybe too much at times. But, man, enough is enough. It's been over 25 years of the same story. This vicious cycle must end, and it has to start now. It's at that point. And I think that Carolina was a breaking point for a lot of people. So let's dive into this. Jason Sardi, lead us off here. Take it away.
George, you mentioned vicious cycle of mediocrity. It's now turned into a Greek tragedy. But Dante, give us your thoughts on the 1-4 start and where your head is at on all this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really surprising. I think, funnily enough, I was like one of the few people who was optimistic about the team coming into the year. I kind of felt like this was an 8, 9, 10 win team, somewhere in that range. So certainly not a world beater, but I did not expect them to be 1-4 to start the season, especially when you look at the start of the season and who they've played. I didn't have overly high expectations for the Colts. The Patriots are a beatable football team. Obviously thought they'd beat Carolina. Buffalo, did not expect them to be Buffalo. So, that was expected. But, ultimately, I think at 1-4, the team's a lot worse than I thought. They're in a lot worse shape than I thought. It's really bad. And I think what the Carolina game emphasized to me, and I wrote about this week on Dolphins on SI, is that to me, it was kind of watching all of the mistakes that this group has made over the past 3 years just come to a head in Carolina. It felt like the structural issues that have been present for multiple seasons. The team doubled down after 2023. They tripled down in 2024. It didn't go well either time. And so to me, it was kind of watching them finally make changes this offseason in the way that they acquire certain personnel and the way that they address certain position groups. I had some hope, but ultimately, I think what I saw in the Panthers game was that the issues that have been with this team for the past 2 to 3 years are here to stay. They are structural problems. They were not solved in the offseason. And whether or not they get it turned around, I don't know how much faith you can have in this group to take it further than 8-9 wins and a playoff appearance, right? And so that's kind of the vicious cycle that you talk about. The most optimistic finish for the Dolphins this year is probably 9-8. And that may or may not make the playoffs. Who knows? But even if they do, are you really expecting them to make any noise when they get there? I'm not. And that would be, that's like what, a 2% outcome at this point. I mean, the last team to make it at 1-4, I don't think there's that many. So that's the vicious cycle you were talking about. And I think that the 1-4 start just shows you how deep into the hole you are with this group. And maybe this group just can't get it done.
Yeah. And most surprising to me, Dante, Jason, you know this as well, is it's a mystery to how to explain this defensive front seven struggles. I mean, maybe we simply just overrated them, or maybe it's Zach Steeler's getting game plan for now. Somebody told me that. It was pretty close to the situation. Like, look, it's different with these rookies. They don't understand a lot of the things they have to do when Zach does this or Zach does that. There's not the chemistry that he had with Campbell, or the ability that Campbell had to do things, or Wilkins. Chop Robinson is the knee injury. Before we get into the vicious cycle, this front seven, is this a mystery to you, or did you think people overhyped it a little bit?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? I was kind of the opinion that this would be a good front seven. I was skeptical on the great front seven, that this is going to be some top 10 group, but I thought they'd be good, right? They're certainly talented. I think ultimately what you had coming into the season on the defensive and offensive side of the ball was just a lot of question marks, a lot of unknowns, right? It's how does Jalen Phillips look returning from injury? How does Bradley Chubb look returning from injury? I liked the Kenneth Grant pick. I liked the Jordan Phillips pick a lot, but they're rookies. That takes time. Defensive tackle is not an easy transition. There's a strength upgrade. There's a speed of the game upgrade. That takes time. And so when you ask these players to come in and have a big impact, whether it's the guys coming off injury or the rookies, you kind of have to live with some ups and downs. You kind of have to live with some growing pains. There are going to be times in which these players don't live up to where they're supposed to be. And so it's not an enigma to me. And I know what's wrong. The players aren't playing well, and they don't have right now. They're soft. It's a soft group of players. They're getting beat up by the Carolina Panthers, that a team that is missing arguably its toughest offensive lineman, former Miami Dolphin Robert Hunt. They just got their butt kicked up front. And to me, that's just, it is what it is. I think the rookies will get better. I'm not out on them. I'm not, it is what it is through 5 games, but I actually think Jordan Phillips has been fine, relatively speaking. Kenneth Grant needs to improve a bunch, but Bradley Chubb's been awful against the run. Matthew Judon's given you nothing in any facet of the game. I think Jalen Phillips is a really nice pressure player. His pressure numbers are nice, and that's good, but not giving you much against the run. And I see the argument for Zach Steeler being game planned for. I'm not saying that isn't happening, but he's not really playing well either. He's getting his butt kicked in the middle too. He's getting moved out of gaps and pushed downfield, and he's out of his rush lane sometimes. So to me, it's not so much an enigma, more so a surprise that they are this bad. It doesn't. They're more talented than this, but you could say that about a lot of portions of the team. I think the defensive line is just the easiest one to kind of talk about right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned about the rookie class, because I was high in Jonah, and I'm Kenneth Grant. It's early. Derek Brown, who we saw last week, wasn't Derek Brown his rookie year, right? Like, Derek Brown is an elite defensive tackle, and he was not that guy. I think we got to be patient. I actually think Dante Trader Jr. should be playing more. I read your article, Dante. I couldn't agree with you more there about Trader Jr. All right, let's jump into here real quick. We're going to get into the cycle and what it means. The game plan for McDaniel the last few games, and kind of without Tyreek. I kind of think they're asking Tua now to do stuff more he can do than he can't now. The play action, the bootleg, kind of the short zone passes. Do you feel Mike is kind of, besides giving up on the running game, which we all know he's doing, but as far as the play calling there without Tyreek the last few games?
Yeah, I think it is very much tied to the running game aspect, but setting that aside, for me, I think that this is a transition that they needed to make regardless of whether Tyreek Hill is injured or not. This is a team that's had one pitch in the passing game for the entire Mike McDaniel era, and that hasn't changed. And so when you cannot attack outside the numbers, downfield, when you don't have, the Dolphins have not had a drop back passing game since the Brian Flores era. Nothing that the Mike McDaniel offense has is a traditional drop back passing game. And in 2022 and 2023, that was fine. It was new, it was flashy, it was clicking. But the reason that teams employ real drop back passing games with long developing concepts and progression reads and not just throwing to spots is because they are more sustainable long term. They are harder to predict. They are harder to defend. And they pose more challenges, frankly, for defenses long term. And so for the Dolphins, they needed to get back to some under center stuff, which they did against the Jets. They needed to get back to that early 2022 offense. If you look at the splits of how many under center snaps they took in 2022, those first 6 weeks or so, it was like a third or a fourth of the offense. At certain points, it was a big part of the offense, and they completely went away with it at the end of 2022 and all of 2023 and most of 2024. So they needed to get back to that stuff regardless of whether Tyreek Hill's in the lineup, because they have to show defenses something different. They just do. And it's worked. Ironically, the Jalen Waddle bomb is an under center hard play action with a heavy formation. Dude's wide open. So it is work. They have the ability to do this stuff. And do I like the idea of Tua on bootlegs? Not particularly. And I don't particularly think he's very good at them either, but that's the life that you have to live now if you're trying to show defenses a little bit something different.
So speaking of Tua, of course, he was listed on the injury report in a limited capacity with two things that have, bitten him before, mainly the hip and the left thumb. George and I have spoken about how that hip injury from his Alabama days could be coming back to bite again. What are your thoughts on that in the injury report today and the long-term viability of him as the franchise quarterback? And if there's any chance that whether it's this season or another season, he can get to January football and maybe even win a couple of games during that month?
Yeah, the injury thing's tough, man, because it's just, Tua's had an injury to like every part of like every section of his body at this point. He's got, he had the ankle surgeries at Alabama. He had the rib injuries, had hand injuries. Obviously the hip now has popped up a couple times. 3 concussions. It's literally ankle to head. You can name a portion of Tua's body that's been banged up that has forced him to miss action. And so I think the part that worries me the most about Tua's long-term viability relative to his health, before we get into the football aspect here, is that Tua does not get hit very much and still gets hurt all the time. I ran a story at the end of last year, and obviously those numbers have changed now, that Tua had taken less hits than Tom Brady in the past 3 years. And Tom was retired for a portion of that period. And so when you have a player like Tua who does not get hit very much, gets the ball out faster than any other quarterback in the league, the entire offense is built around speed and the ability to get the ball out so he does not get hit. And he still gets hurt. To me, that is a really tough pill to swallow for long-term viability. And I don't want to blame Tua for that. It's not his fault, ultimately. Or you could argue individual injuries. He could have protected himself better, yada, yada. That's totally fine. I'm not denying that. But overall, the guy's just had horrible luck for a while now. On the football side of things, look, Tua can win in January if the situation is right. And that's where I've always believed Tua is. That is not new. I've had the same opinion on Tua for 3+ years now. Think he's a good quarterback, nothing more, nothing less. That's it. And you can win with that in the playoffs. That's not impossible. But I think that things have to go well. If the conditions are not good, and those can be weather conditions, that can be the health of his receivers, the health of his offensive line. Tua is not going to pull you ahead. He is not going to drag you to a playoff victory in January. He's just not. The system might, the players around him might. He might help the players around him get a playoff win. But ultimately, Tua is not going to put the team on his back and will them to a playoff win. It's just not going to happen. So, when we talk about long-term viability, to me, I think the Dolphins need to start to heavily consider moving on from Tua as the franchise quarterback. It's unfortunate. It is what it is. I wanted Tua to be the guy. I wanted him to get it done in Miami, but ultimately you're dealing with a player who limits you on the field and is also an insane injury risk. And so I think that you can do better, frankly, is all I think here. Is less to do with Tua and more to do with the fact I think the Dolphins can do better, no matter who the head coach or the GM is. So it's a complicated situation. I don't know when it's going to happen, if it's this offseason, the following offseason, whatever it ends up being, maybe he turns it around. But I'm not overly optimistic. I think Tua showed you who he is at this point. There's enough tape. There's enough data points out there. Tua is who he is. I don't think he's changed that much. I don't think he's going to change a lot more.
I couldn't agree more. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for all the questions. Appreciate it. Make sure you drop those likes. If you're watching anywhere else on the platform, come on over to YouTube with us. Show Dante some love here. We're getting into how we're going to end this vicious cycle. But now we're going to get into the good stuff. You mentioned too, the thing to me is I would bring up the point. He's 27, but with that hip, he could be an older 27. Like maybe when he came into the league, there was people say like a 5 to 8 year window with him. We might be seeing that, and I agree. Everything you said with him, I said this, Dante. I don't know. You can keep him around that Alex Smith role. Like, get a quarterback. Tua's fine. You said it good. I always say this. Tua's not a bus driver. He's not leading the bus, right? But if you have everything set, all the engines, everything's right. It's got its tune up. It's got oil change. You tuned it up. He can drive it effectively, but he's not the leader of that bus. You know what I mean? He's not a bus driver. He's kind of the passenger. And everything has to be pretty good around him, and he can do it. And we're seeing that, and we see what he is. I agree. He's put enough on tape. He's a good, solid quarterback. You can win with him. With injury history, that's unpredictable, but he's not elite. He's not going to take you and carry you over the top. When your O-line's not good, your front seven's not good, less can be wrong with Tua. All right, but so I agree with you 100%. I want to get into kind of the whole thing, the hope, the hype, the collapse, the reset. From your view, what drives that cycle year after year? What is driving the cycle?
Yeah, it's really tough because so it's funny you've used the 25-year kind of reference for how long.
I made it clean,
I've been alive for 25 years. I'm 25 years old. And so my experience with the team is always been this. I don't know anything different. I've never seen Dan Marino throw a pass in an NFL game. I was not alive when Dan Marino was the Dolphins quarterback. So it's always been this for me. I think with this group, to me, it was arrogance that I think ultimately sunk the ship. And I think that when you look at this team, to me at least, and again, I'm just some guy who breaks down tape on Twitter, right? To me, the issues on this team were readily apparent following the playoff loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I saw a group of decision makers, instead of trying to adapt, instead of trying to change, they doubled down on the players that they were comfortable with, the scheme that they were comfortable with, and the strategy that they were comfortable with. And they didn't realize they screwed up until last year. And this past offseason was too little, too late. And so I think when you get into this vicious cycle, you get into a place where the only way you get out is you either muddle through with what you have and you wait for a breakthrough, whether that's a year or 2 more years, whatever that ends up looking like, or you just have to keep resetting until you get it right. And it has to be a clean reset. None of this reshuffling, Mike Tannenbaum gets an advisor role and Chris Grier's promoted. None of that. It's got to be everybody gone. Everyone's out. All the key decision makers, all the coaches, all the scouts, everybody. You have to do a clean reset, set the table clean. And I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't do that, but that's the only way you get out of the cycle. If you keep the same people, if you keep the same thought processes in the building, you're just going to end up in a similar place. It's not going to change. And so I would probably tell you that I think Chris Grier is a better GM than the fan base does, but I would tell you he's a league average GM. That's what I think Chris Grier is. He's a league average GM. I don't think he's some scrub. I don't think he doesn't know football or anything like that. but he's been around forever. He has been the brain trust helping to make football decisions since 2016, and he's been in the organization far longer than that. And so to me, if you want to get out of the vicious cycle, it's either power through and just wait for these guys to figure it out, or you have to clean house. It has to be everybody at every level of every position. That's the only way you get out of it. And the Dolphins haven't really done that. They did that with the roster during the rebuild and the coaching staff, but the GM was Chris Grier. It was still Chris Grier's scouting staff. And I know that there's a lot of reports about how much he makes decisions versus the coaches, blah, 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 blah.
It's
Whatever.
on him, though. I'm putting it on him. Yeah.
We can trade reported stories all day. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you have to either commit to a full rebuild or commit to powering through. That's it. There's none of this in the middle stuff. And that's how you end up in the vicious cycle. That's why history keeps repeating itself for the Dolphins. They need a completely clean reset from the top to the bottom.
Yeah. And it's funny you said I agree with you. He's an average GM. And that's kind of like when it happened in 2019. I said, okay, I'm for the teardown. Like it's we haven't seen this kind of full teardown. I'm for it. But then when I saw who's buying the groceries, I was like, how do you see where this is going? Because he is league average, and he tore down an average team and built another one. It's just what he is. Like you say Tua has enough on film. You have enough on film of Chris Grier kind of, telling you what he is. I mean, to me, I'm going to read you guys the coaches since 2000. Wanstaff from 2000 to 04. Jim Bates, the interim coach in 04 when they got rid of Wanstaff. Saban, 2005 to 2006. Cam Cameron, we know that experience, 2007. Tony Sperano, 2008 to 2011. Rest in peace. I like Tony a lot. Then we had the Joe Philbin experience. Was that 2012 to 15? And then we had Dan Campbell in 2015. And then we had Adam Gase in 2016, 2018. Then we have obviously Brian Flores and Mike McDaniel present. And then you look at the front office, right? Since 2000. You had Wanstatt, who's the head coach and kind of, I don't know how he got this title, player personnel. That was from 2000 to 2003. You also had Rick Spielman in there. Rick was then promoted in 2004, I believe, when Wanstatt left to the VP of player personnel. Then you had the Randy Mueller regime with the Ted Ginn draft. Then you had Jeff Ireland from 2008 to 2013 with Bill Parcells there for that 1 year as the exec of VP operations. Then you had Dennis Hickey. Guys, Dennis Hickey is the one who ruined a lot of this, and I'll tell you why. That's the one. Many people don't know. Dennis Hickey, Stephen Ross got so afraid when he hired Dennis Hickey and realized he couldn't do the day-to-day stuff. That's why he likes Chris Grier so much. He trusts him. And obviously we have Grier from 2016 to now with Mike Tannenbaum kind of in there from 15 to 18. I mean, look at the list. I mean, it tells you it's a bunch of wrong decisions. I mean, both of you guys, when you hear that list, what comes to your mind?
Well, a lot of mistakes, and what Grier had to do initially, 2016, he still had oversight from Tannenbaum. So you really got to start Grier's clock in 2019. And that brings me to where I want to get Dante's opinion on where, if you could pinpoint it, that was the ground zero of his rebuild. And there's been basically 2 or 3 other rebuilds in between. Where did that initial 2019 start for him go wrong? And yes, as George mentioned, he did have to clean up Hickey and other people's mess. That's for sure. But where did this whole thing go wrong?
Man, that's a really good question.
2020 draft.
I was about to say that. I do think that's my answer because
Dante, sorry to put you off. We need a 30 and 30 of the 20 and 21 draft.
It's tough because I think Tua obviously hasn't quite reached the levels that maybe you think a top 5 quarterback should hit, but he's not a bad quarterback. He's not a bad football player to any extent. So to me, it's not even really about Tua. It's about the other picks. And I'll give Austin Jackson a lot of credit. He's turned out to be way better than I thought he was going to be following the first 2.5 years of his career. I was pretty sure he was going to get cut at that point. I mean, he was awful when he started. So give him credit. He worked his way into being a serviceable right tackle, and good for him. But he doesn't play very much. He's very injured, and he's really only given you 1.5 seasons of good football as the 20th overall pick at a very important position. And then you completely whiff on Noah Igbenogany at the back end of the round. So, I mean, you end up lighting 2 first-round picks on fire. And then I believe that was the year they drafted Robert Hunt, if I'm not mistaken. And Robert Hunt, obviously, I would not have paid him the contract that he got from Carolina for what it's worth. But I think as a team that has a player in-house for 4 years, you have the ability to get ahead of the market and make a deal that doesn't let him get to free agency where the Carolina Panthers can overpay him. And so you let him walk and you get nothing out of that. So you look at, I think Hunt was a top 40 pick. If he wasn't, it was incredibly close. It was either right out.
If I'm not, he's 39th, I think.
Yeah, it was close. So, I mean, you essentially have 4 top 40 picks, 4 top 40 picks, 3 in the first round to start your rebuild. You get nothing basically from Noah Igbenogany. Austin Jackson, you get like a little bit return of your investment. You draft a quarterback who maybe the worst one out of the top 5 quarterbacks taken. And that says more about the quarterbacks in that class than it does about Tua, but like, it is what it is. And then you let Robert Hunt leave because you don't sign him to a contract in time. So I look at that 2020 draft class that had the chance to be the bedrock of your team. And the best player you got out of it was Tua, who's good. He's a good player. That's a hit. I'm not saying that pick's a miss. That'd be ridiculous, but like, you know, Tua's had his own problems, and the other good player that you got in Robert Hunt, you didn't re-sign. And so that's where it starts for me is that what could have been the bedrock of the rebuild. And I think from there you saw why the team, when they hired Mike McDaniel, why they had to go out there and just sign a bunch of stars because they didn't have any on the roster. And so they had to go out and mortgage draft picks for Tyreek Hill. They had to flip a 3rd rounder for Jalen Ramsey. And I don't even know that those trades were bad in hindsight, but you know, you go to the trade deadline and you move more picks for Bradley Chubb. Something that doesn't get talked about enough is the team losing a 1st-round pick for tampering with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. Like one of the most ridiculous stories in recent NFL memory, a 1st-round pick taken from a team for tampering with a quarterback on a division rival and a head coach who was a Fox analyst. I just like, that makes me I lose my mind, man. Like it's just, but I do think, to me, it goes back to the 2020 draft. I think you missed on too many of those picks, and there's a lot of nuance to talk about with Austin Jackson and Tua Tagovailoa, and I don't think that those players are bad. I don't think they were horrible picks, but is Austin Jackson worth the 20th overall pick in the NFL draft? No. No Igbenogany gives you nothing. You don't re-sign Robert Hunt. You miss on arguably 3 of the 4 picks.
Hindsight is 2020, especially in the 2020 draft, but I ultimately fully agree with you. But there were probably 3 or 4 egregious mistakes that Grier made during that draft. You're a team that had a wide receiver group of Devontae Parker, Allen Hurns, Preston Williams, and no running backs. And you don't draft a wide receiver or a running back until the 7th round with Malcolm Perry, who is a tweener of like a wildcat. How do you not give your franchise quarterback a toy in Justin Jefferson, in Jonathan Taylor? I mean, that should have been on the precipice of CeeDee Lamb, of going with someone to pair with Tua. Instead, they go with literally the 2 youngest project players in Austin Jackson and Noah Igbenogany. You hit the nail on the head in your description of those guys. And then, Dante, I want to kind of build on where this thing went wrong is when you look at the 2019, 2020, 21, and 22 and 23 draft, what Grier has not done is retained the hits. We could list the names as you did. We could add a couple of more. 6 players are on this 2025 team, and Liam Eichenberg is the 7th out of the 32 draft picks they've made in those 5 drafts. You can't build a team like that. And just, to me, if you were entering that 2020 draft, he should have moved up and down that board like a poker player with a mountain of chips versus 5 other players with tiny stacks. He could have been a bully, and he wasn't. He essentially slow played that draft, and here we are. So
I look at it like this. Sorry, JC, you finished?
No, that's basically it.
You had to come out with, when you build a team and you're loading up on draft picks, you got to invest everything and you got to hit on some premium players, some blue chip guys. They just didn't hit enough on. They hit a lot of doubles. To me, Christian Wilkins is a double. I don't call that a home run. He's a nice player. Javon Holland's a double. Robert Hunt's probably a triple, or home run. We'll give Robert Hunt a home run. What is a single? What's the defensive tackle? Raekwon Davis. Austin Jackson, he became a right tackle, but you drafted him to be your left tackle. Then you had to go invest some money. That mistake, invested in Teron Armstead, which is a great signing, but you had to pay him. And forget Noah. But they wanted CeeDee Lamb. Go up. You have all those picks. Jump Dallas. They actually called Dallas and said, hey, let's move up one spot. What do you think Dallas said? They looked at him laughing. If you want CeeDee Lamb, take some of that capital and go up 4 spots. Those are the things they didn't do right. They had the poker chips, and I said it. This is the guy who was dealing at the poker table, and that's what's going to be the problem ultimately. And that's where we're looking back. And in the 21 draft, let's not talk about that trade. You guys remember the trade? I was so happy when they made that trade from 3 to 12. Wow. And then 30 minutes later, my disappointment of the trade of going from 12 to 6 and giving up a first-round pick. Let it play out. Devontae Smith ended up at 10, right? Yeah. Would you have Waddle or Smith? I mean, it's pretty close, right? It's pretty close. To me, they're about the same guy. You could have just traded up 12 to 10, gave up a third-round pick. You're in a buyer position. Let it play out. You have the chip. They didn't do that. Where's his conviction move? Where's his power move? That's the problem with Chris Grier.
The power move was trading Laremy Tunsil and not hitting after it.
How are the Chiefs the Chiefs? How are the Bills the Bills? They had conviction. They're not afraid. It's singular vision. Hey, we like this guy in the building. I like this guy. I believe this guy's the guy. Let's go up and get him. Let's do what we got to take. We don't do that. People talk about the Lamar Jackson. Oh, we're taking Minka Fitzpatrick. How about this crazy idea? Trade back up in the first round and get Lamar Jackson. Get both of them. It's just there's no power. There's no conviction move. It blows my mind. And I think, to me, Dante, you hit it on the head. I think those 2 drafts. And you know what also they didn't do? They kind of went young, old, young. You know what I mean? They kind of veered from the plan. I said this, and people looked at me crazy. I thought the beginning of the end was when they traded for Tyreek Hill. I thought they started, I know Tyreek did a lot for Tua and a lot for the organization. And, there was the wild offensive years. But I think it was not more trading for Tyreek. I'm interested in your take on this, Dante. But the start of, okay, let's stop the plan. Let's trade for a 28-year-old speed receiver. We have Jalen Waddle. Let's give up the picks. It kind of started the plan to change, right? I think that's what I mean more than that. What do you could you buy that theory, or Tyreek?
Yeah, no, I can buy it to a certain degree, right? I think it kind of goes back to what I said at the end is you had a team that, despite having immense draft capital, was lacking the star power. They didn't have any, right? And I think what ultimately I think killed this version of the Dolphins is the drafts from 22, 23, and 24. That to me is what killed this version of the Dolphins. You get nothing from the 2022 draft. You don't select that many players, but you get nothing from Shannon Tyndall, nothing from Eric Izukama, Cameron Good. Ironically enough, the best player on this list might actually be Skylar Thompson, which not what you want, not great. You get nothing from those guys. You go to 2023, Devon Achane, great player. You hit. Congratulations. You get nothing from Cam Smith. Not a damn thing. Elijah Higgins didn't make it out of training camp. Ryan Hayes is still on the team, but he's not doing nothing for you. Or he's not on the team anymore.
He's practice squad. Yeah. Or he was
practice squad still?
I think he was actually cut.
Or he's selling insurance somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah,
he's not on the
nothing
real
against
roster.
Ryan Hayes, but you didn't get anything out of that. Okay, 2024, Chop Robinson, Patrick Paul, jury's still out. Jalen Wright's inactive, not doing nothing. Muhammad Kanara, not doing nothing. Malik Washington, all right, good little utility player. I like Malik, but hit for a 6th-round pick.
I can get Malik Washington.
He's good, but Patrick McMorris, not giving you anything. Taj, nice little player for the 7th round, really not doing a ton for you. That to me is where this team fell off. You only made, you made 10 selections between the 2022 and 2023 NFL draft. Out of that group, you got one good player, Devon Achane, a running back. As much as I like Devon Achane, running backs are highly replaceable. And so you make 10 selections over the course of 2 years, and you get one football player who is a meaningful contributor to your team. That's going to kill the core, the depth of your roster. And it goes that, why do you only have 10 selections? Because you trade for Tyreek Hill, because you trade for Jalen Ramsey, because you trade picks at the deadline for Bradley Chubb, because your owner invited Tom Brady on a boat. Like, it's like, that's what, that type of stuff, that's what sunk this version of the Dolphins to me. Are those years, those drafts, because they were very successful in 22. They were very successful in 2023, but they weren't built to last. They weren't built to for longevity. They had no depth. They were relying on spending up money in free agency. Those years, they've stopped doing that the past 2 years because they did it so much and they handed out extensions like they were going out of style in the summer of right before the 2024 season. So it came back to bite them. They lost the plot, if you will, of trying to do this rebuild methodically and to build through the process and all this different stuff. They got a little bit, in my opinion, they got a little trigger happy with some of the stuff. And it's easy to look back on it now and be like, man, they gave away way too many picks for these players, right? Because it didn't work out. How differently would our opinions feel if they had won a playoff game in that stretch, right? The difference of one win versus a loss. I don't know. Maybe our opinions would be a lot different, but ultimately they didn't win that playoff game. And it's easy to go back and look at that period and be like, wow, you actually just got no good young players for 2 straight years. There's not a roster in the NFL that's going to hold that up unless you have Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Joe Burrow. And I like Tua, but he's not that guy. And so that roster building strategy just doesn't work. And the plan that they've taken to fix it in 2024 and 2025, I like from like an on paper POV, but the early returns not ideal right now. And so it's too early to judge the 2025 class or anything like that. And I still have hope for those guys for sure. But you gutted the depth of your roster and you did not properly replace it. You missed at almost every opportunity that you got.
Yeah. I could, and part of the problem is you didn't have those picks, and when you had no picks in that draft, I think they had like the fewest picks ever, like in that 2-year span. Was it 23, 24, or 22, 23? I don't remember. But like you went linebacker and you passed up Leo Chenal and you passed up Zach Tom. Like, and I mean every team does that, but it just seems like every year we need a position and we take the wrong guy. Like we move up for a guy in the same position, the guy that we all the fans think they should take. Actually works out better, but yeah, I agree. I just want to shout out a couple people in the chat. Gloria, shout out to Gloria. Finn Sammy's in the house. Kosa, Daniel, Happy Hippie, everybody. Thank you guys. If you're watching anywhere else, come on YouTube with us. We're with Dante Collinelli, trying to figure out how we can finally, for all of us, break this vicious cycle. It is vicious. The merry-go-round of mediocrity, as I like to call it, Jason Sonny. Is interesting. All right. I want to ask you this. Let's play a little game here. If you had to assign kind of a blame percentage for the team structure, how would you split it between the ownership, front office, coaching staff? Dante, I think player development has a role here too.
Yeah, it's a really difficult question because I tried to do this, I think on Monday for the 1-4 start. I tried to like hash out like, do I think this is coaching? Is this the GM? Is it the players? Yada, yada, yada. And what I ended up having a problem with is it's really hard to assign specific portions of blame when everything is terrible, because it's just like, I feel like, no, because like you start, because, okay, the front seven isn't good. Okay, the players aren't playing well. Okay, well, I have a coaching staff that isn't coaching well. Well, the coaches didn't pick the players. So now do I go and blame the GM who drafted Kenneth Grant and drafted Jordan Phillips and gave Zach Sealer a big contract and relied on injured edge rushers? Is that their fault? Well, the Dolphins have a unique structure where the head coach actually pushes the buttons a lot on the personnel side. So now I go from the GM to the head coach, and it's like, okay, well, did the head coach make these decisions? Who made these decisions? Why were these decisions made? Do I blame the head coach for development? Do I blame the players for playing poorly? Do I blame the GM for putting these players in place? And I know I'm like talking in circles, but that's the point. It's like anytime I go in and try to parse through all of this, it just goes back to like, I think it's a systematic failure. You can put, if you want to do it evenly, I think you put 33% of the blame on the players, 33% of the blame on the coaching staff, and the other 33% on the GM. Stick the owner in there if you want to split it 4 ways, 25, 25, 25, like whatever you want to do. It's just like they're 1-4. They just blew a 17-point lead to a way less talented Panthers team. Everything's bad. Like, I don't know, like, what portion of the blame to even, like, subscribe. And you have a unique situation where the head coach and the GM are involved in personnel decisions, are involved in the direction of the team. So as much as I want to sit here and be like, dude, Chris Grier's draft sucked, Mike McDaniel's in his ear telling him who to pick half the time. Do I blame Mike? Do I blame Chris? Should Chris have put his foot down? Are the players taking to the coaching? Am I really going to sit up here and blame Austin Clark for the D-line play? Like, I don't know. That doesn't really feel fair to Austin Clark, honestly. Like, so it's difficult. I think everyone deserves whatever portion of the blame you want to give them. Whoever you think is a factor is at fault here. Nobody should get off free. Nobody is innocent in this. There is no narrative that should be spun that says otherwise. Everyone is at fault for the Dolphins being 1-4. It is a total systematic failure when you blow a 17-point lead to this version of the Carolina Panthers. It just is. Personnel, players, coaching, everybody. So as much as that's a bit of a cop-out answer to your specific question, I don't really see any other way to do it, because everyone has had a lot of hands in the honeypot for the past couple of years. And I think even the players, it's roughly the same core. They've changed some, and some pieces. Teron Armstead retired. It's roughly the same core. It's Tua, Hill, Waddle. That's the core. Like, I don't know. And then obviously they made a lot of changes this past offseason, but it's tough, man. I think everyone deserves as much blame as you want to give them, frankly.
I just want to, before we go on, Gloria, shout out to Gloria, who I should see them. Obviously, the fan weekend this Saturday at both campers. I'll be at the game. By the way, our post-game show is going to be probably a little bit later, maybe 7 or 8 at night, because I'll be at the game. But they have their annual toy drive starting next home game here. So please, everybody, bring an unwrapped gift. Look for her in the orange East 12 and row at the end of row 209. Please, there's nothing. I always love doing the toy drives. Kids. To me, it's one of the saddest things when kids don't have anything to open. It's just, please contact Gloria and make sure you go find her. And I can't wait to meet her and a lot of people this weekend. All right, so Jason.
To piggyback off of that, Gloria and the folks at Eastgate 12, literally is one of the favorite places of mine on the planet. I hope to get there this year, maybe in December. But Gloria, you do excellent work. So many folks in that specific area do tremendous things for the community. So if you have yet to go to that specific area of a Dolphin tailgate, please put it on your checklist, and please bring a toy, bring something. They have a big, huge basket you can put something in, but just wanted to add to that. But Dante, let's play kind of king for a day. You're in charge of the Miami Dolphins. You have the joystick on how to manipulate everything. How do you break the 25-year cycle? Where do you start? What do you do?
Yeah, to me, I think it starts with selling at the trade deadline in early November. I think unless this team comes out the next, I don't know how many games we have until the trade deadline. I'm going to say 4 or 5 off the top of my head. Unless the team goes out and goes 4 or 5-0, whatever that ends up looking like, and you're either 5-4 at the trade deadline, or you're, honestly, if I was 4-5, I'd probably still sell. I think it's time to offload whatever you can, whether that's Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill is no one's going to take him right now because of the injury. I understand. I would have traded him this offseason, but I don't know. Maybe they tried and nobody wanted him then. That's beside the point. I'd try to move Bradley Chubb. I would try to move anyone with a pulse that another team wanted. My phone would be open to hear offers on. I'm not saying I would take all of them. I'm not saying that I would. Yeah.
I thought
if somebody called and they were like, I don't know, a not very good team, and they were like, we'll give you our 2nd round pick for Devon Achane, I wouldn't hang up the phone. I'm not saying I'd do it, but I'd think about it. Yeah. I consider it. The problem with that, right? In this scenario, you're making me the king, which is great. I appreciate that.
King Dante.
Yeah, right. But like in the real world that we live in, I don't know that there's going to be any changes at the trade deadline. So I don't know if it starts there. It might be one of those where you just kind of have to wait for the season to be over. But that's where my plan would start. I would start at the trade deadline. I'd be trying to move veterans. I'd be trying. The phone would be open. Call me about a player and we'll have a conversation. Anyone is available for the right price, I think, at a certain point. And if the Dolphins are, 3-6 at the trade deadline, that should be their approach. There's no reason to do anything different. I'm not saying you have to trade all these players, but if somebody calls you up and they're like, we'll give you a first and a second round pick for Jalen Waddle, or they're like, or even just a first.
When is the trade deadline? In early November?
It's early November.
November
4.
I mean, one little quick. I know you have a follow up, George, but one thing on HN, because I know there was a tweet today that said there are teams interested, and Dolphins Twitter is falling apart about. I'm not saying there's any validity to that report, but I want your opinion, Dante, on something that I kind of preach here. When it comes to second contracts, when it comes to contracts or in any way, shape, or form, a team has to offer it to a player, and a player has to agree on that said contract. So in a hypothetical for HN, do you think that there's any chance that he wants to sign if we fast forward to a second contract, if the offensive line is still not at par, if this team is in year 2 of yet another rebuild? What are the chances that you think he's like, all right, guys, I'll sign on the dotted line. I don't care where we're at. Do you think there's a realistic chance that they could retain and bring him back 2027 and beyond?
I think HN long-term is likely tied to Mike McDaniel to a certain degree. I don't know that Devon Achane is going to find another coach in the entire sport who is going to maximize what he does on the football field better than Mike McDaniel. Devon is a player that I really like. I think he's a budding star. I think he's good. I would not have any issue with him having a Miami Dolphins jersey for the next 10 years. It wouldn't bother me at all, assuming he plays up to par, right? So I'm totally open to keeping him. I think, to me, though, like, as good as Devon is, he is not this like ground and pound 20 carries per game back who's going to win in, inside zone duo gap power scheme. He is a outside zone runner who is a very good receiver for a running back. And that's valuable. I'm not saying that isn't valuable, but if the Dolphins, hire someone who's not as committed to the outside zone, who isn't going to utilize running backs as creatively as Mike McDaniel does, is Devon Achane worth it to the Dolphins? I don't know that he is, frankly. But for him, if he is around and Mike stays for whatever reason, the Dolphins turn it around, but whatever. To me, yeah, I think Devon would stay, because I think I would like to think at least that he would recognize that this is a really good place for him in the right scheme and the right usage. I don't know how many teams are going to line him up in the slot and run a switch release in the red zone and throw him a back shoulder ball and let him make a turning catch. I don't know. There might
Mike McDaniel is the only coach in the world who's going to do that.
Right. And like,
Dante, it's a great point.
Right.
I don't know. Again, I don't know where he's going to find a better situation. And we're like, I mean, that man had what, like 120 touches last year? I mean, they were just throwing the ball like it was going out of style in 2024. For a running back, I don't know how much more opportunity cost you could possibly want. So it's a good question, though. And I think it'll be something that, to me, like, Achane is tied to this staff to a certain degree. Not that he can't be successful if another staff comes in, but another staff, I don't think is going to give him 120 touches a year. I'd be really surprised unless for some reason they hire a McDaniel disciple to replace Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with what direction they take. If they fire McDaniel earlier on this season, we'll ask you that question. If they fire him soon, I think you're right. It really depends where Ross heads at and where he has in the organization to make those kind of decisions. Speaking of Ross, and shout out to the over 120 people on our platforms, guys. Make sure you come over to YouTube, guys. Hit that like button. We got Dante Collinelli on from Dolphins on that side, the All Dolphins podcast with Alan Poupard. How are they going to end the vicious cycle? King Dante is kind of giving his answers. Speaking of Ross, he's invested heavily in the infrastructure, the stadium, the Hard Rock branding, the F1. Do you feel the same focus exists on the football operations side?
It's hard for me to say. I've never met Stephen Ross. I'm not in the building. It's hard.
Your perception,
From the outside, like, yeah, I do. I think people are upset with Stephen Ross right now because the decisions that he's made have not turned out, and I completely understand that. But as someone who has not only covered the Dolphins for the past 3 years, but has also covered the entire NFL for the past 3 years with the 33rd team and now with A to Z Sports, yep. I can tell you there are significantly worse owners that you could have running your football team than Stephen Ross. People are upset with him right now, and that's completely fair. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't be upset with him. He has made bad decisions, generally speaking, for the past 20 odd years. Call it whatever you want, right? So I get it. I really do. But like, he stays out of the way. He puts a ton of money in. I think it's clear he wants to win. He seems, very committed to winning. And I think, ironically, as much as people are going to push back on this, I actually think sticking with Mike after last year shows that he is committed to winning. I don't know that many owners would have the patience. Now, whether or not that ultimately ends up working out, clearly it has not so far. And we'll look back on this in a few years and be like, wow, what a terrible decision, right? If they finish like 4-11 or whatever it ends up being. But I think keeping Mike and then showing the patience and the fortitude to be like, hey, this is my guy. I put some trust in him. He's shown me some success in the past. Whatever you think of Mike McDaniel, he's a very bright guy. I think a lot of players really do like him, even if he's had some players not in the years. Coaches have that. That happens from time to time. It's not like Mike's some bum coach, right? Like, it's like, I get it. I understand why they stuck with him. And I think from Stephen Ross's perspective, to me, that shows a commitment to willing to let this thing play out. He's not being impulsive. He's not rushing. Maybe the Dolphins could use some impulsivity. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's not an unfair argument, but I don't really have a lot of questions about Ross's commitment to win with the Dolphins just because he built an F1 track around the stadium.
I mean, I agree. I think it's more than about, yes, I do. I think Ross wants to win. Absolutely. Do I think it's more than opening the pocketbook? Look, here's my thing on this whole thing. Let me just say it now. This entire organization, for me, needs a fresh mindset. From top to bottom, Dante. From the scouting to the parking lot crew to the secretary to the front desk, every corner of this place needs a fresh reset. I think we got to do enough with the lazy internal promotions that could happen and reshuffles, like moving Grier around and promoting Chip Kelly. To me, that's not progress. That's just rearranging the deck chairs on a sinking ship. I mean, keep doing that, and 5 years from now, we'll be having the same miserable conversation. And to me, Ross has accepted mediocrity, and it shows. It's time to stop rewarding comfort and start demanding excellence. Clean house, change the culture, or we're going to stay stuck in mediocrity, guys, and we're going to be having this conversation again. That's my say on it. I hope that was good, Jason.
Well, painfully, we have to talk about the Chargers game, and to play off of the word painful, their injury report is nearly double the size of the Dolphins. And on that Dolphin injury report, as we referenced before, Tua is on the report. Storm Duck is back. Cedric Wilson is making his re-return. He's back practicing. But let's talk about that game as a whole. How do you see it? And do the Dolphins have a legitimate chance to kind of right this ship? Because if they lose, and we'll talk about it after your assessment, this could be not a fun week from now. If they, we'll get to that. But I want to hear you. I want to hear your official preview of this Chargers game.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good game. Ultimately, I do think the Dolphins have a legitimate chance to win. I don't know that I would have said that a few weeks ago. The Chargers came out of the gate really hot. They looked good, but in typical Chargers fashion, they just have the worst luck that you could possibly imagine. And as you mentioned, the injury report's really long, and the list of players that are on IR is really long. I mean, Omarion Hampton's been a revelation for them this year. He goes on IR right before the week they play the Dolphins. So I think the Dolphins absolutely have a chance. And I would have, again, in a West Coast team, early 1:00 game, not always great. We saw the Chargers kind of struggle with that when they went to New York. They didn't look particularly good against the Giants. Really vulnerable offensive line. I think the world of Justin Herbert. I think he's a phenomenal quarterback, and he's going to give you a game no matter what. But yeah, I think the Dolphins can beat the Chargers. Do I think they'll beat the Chargers? No, but I think they can. And you know what? That might be as good as you're going to get at 1-4.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little closer than people think. I do.
I'm gonna paint a little picture here. That's probably gonna
give it to him, Sonny.
Be pretty horrible. But the reason why I think that if they lose this game, with everything considered, that this has to be the last straw for at least one of the managers, in whether it's McDaniel and/or Grier. We could talk about the whole Grier scenario and a whole other topic. But if they lose to a team that is down Joe Walton, Rashawn Slater, Amari and Hampton, have other injuries, significant injuries across that whole team. And then you mix like the fun stuff, like Jim Harbaugh will beat you. You wanted him as your coach. Justin Herbert's going to beat you. You could have drafted him over Tua. Derwin James is in the defensive backfield. You could have drafted him over Javon Holland. Oronde Gadsden, the second, is probably going to catch a touchdown or two.
I got another one, Jason. Pierre Tart.
Pierre Tart's one of the number one ranked defensive linemen, and we're like, you know what? Goodbye. But there's so many annoyances that a fan could say, this team beat us at home, and now we're 1-5. I said this in the preseason or right after that Colts loss, even, George. This is the game to circle. Yep. And I doubled down and tripled down that I'm quadrupling down that if they do not win this game, there has to be a move. Has to be.
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, I think to me, like when they lost to Buffalo, it was like, okay, like at any time that this happens, I'm not going to be like actually surprised. I think that was kind of not that, and it's funny because you might even argue that the Bills game was like their best effort of the season, generally speaking. But like when they lost that game, I kind of felt comfortable in the sense that like, if I had woken up on Friday morning and Mike McDaniel had gotten fired, I would not have been shocked. Not even because they played horribly in that game. It's just like, okay, the season's probably over at 0-3. You're not a respectable football team. So at any point, it would not surprise me if Chris Grier, I don't think Chris Grier will get fired during the season. I'd be shocked. I think it would have to be McDaniel. But yeah, Jason, it wouldn't shock me. All to say is if they lose to the Chargers and Stephen Ross gets up and he's just like, I can't believe this crap, and he pulls the trigger, yeah, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't at all.
What do you say? Speaking of Grier real quick, what do you say the stuff about that's out there, the theory that, they won't fire Grier because the lawsuit's going on? If that's true, this organization is more a mess than I thought of. I mean, have you heard that stuff? I've seen there could be some truth to it, but like, because fans don't understand how you could keep him around for this long, with the results, it's kind of average.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into the speculation point of that, but
you've heard it though, right? It's been out there.
Yeah, no, I do agree with your point overall. That if that's where the team is at, that's an unserious situation to be in. Which, like, again, I don't know what went on behind the scenes. I don't know if the lawsuit is true or not. I literally have no idea, and I don't want to speculate about it. But if that's where they're at, if they're forced into that position, I think that just tells you everything you need to know about whether or not this is a serious franchise run by serious people. And the answer would be no in that scenario.
Is Mike McDaniel the coach this time next week?
I would say odds are, yeah, probably. I don't know if Stephen Ross wants to make an in-season hire, even though it wouldn't shock me if he does. I really think he's going to be looking for any excuse possible to just let the season end and let Mike go and make changes and all that stuff. I don't think he wants to do it in season. I don't think he wants to be that guy. I don't think you bring back Mike McDaniel to fire him, even if the team's 1-5. I really don't. But to Jason's point, would I be shocked if Stephen Ross got up and say they lose 40-17 on Sunday and it's just a non-competitive football game? Would I be shocked if Stephen Ross made a firing? No, I would not. But ultimately, I don't think that's what he wants to do. That's been consistent with the reports that I've seen from people who are a lot more connected than I am to what's going on in the Dolphins building. So if Mike McDaniel gives him a reason, any reason at all over the next 3 to 4 weeks, I think he'll just stick around for the season and we could see a reset at the end of the year. But look, if they lose by 20 points at home and the banner's flying overhead and Justin Herbert's nuking the ball down the field, like maybe there's a change. I think Jason makes some good points about the Chargers specifically being a bit of a breaking point for you, because you kind of feel like you could be that team. That could be you, and it's not. So we'll see. But ultimately, I still think the odds are against McDaniel in season firing.
You're muted, Jason. It's all right. We gotta have one of those during the show.
Yep, that was my fumble, but I recovered it. But breaking point, that's the terminology. I agree with you there. We'll ask you for a final score, but before that, is there anything that this team, that this owner, that this whole organization can do to regain the trust? What would it be?
Man. I am at the point with the Miami Dolphins now where it's like I have to see it to believe it. I don't know that there's an action that they could take that would instantly get me to buy back in. And look, I'm an analyst now. I cover the job. I cover the team. Is my job, right? So I kind of have to like take my fan hat off sometimes and think about the team a bit objectively. And so I think I will believe the Miami Dolphins are a serious organization when they win a playoff game. Whenever that ends up being, that's where I'm at. They made the playoffs 2 straight years. They checked that box. Okay, go win a playoff game. Go prove that you are one of the 4 best teams in the AFC one year. Go, or the 6 best teams if you want to get to the divisional round, whatever it ends up being. Like, that is where I'm at with the team. I've seen enough of the hope in the rebuilds, and I'm a draft guy. I love rebuilds. Rebuilds are fun. But like, I've had enough of the hope. I've had enough of I had so much faith in this group specifically. I thought the early returns on Mike and Tua and even Chris Grier to a certain extent were good. I thought that there was enough here to create a team that could make some legitimate noise. But their arrogantness, their inability to change, adapt, evolve with the things that have been thrown at them over the years has left me in a position where, look, I'll believe it when I see it. There are things that I think that they should do. I think that if this team continues to lose and they have a top 5 pick, a top 10 pick, yeah, I think you clean house. I think you clean house. I would clean house no matter what. I think it's time to go. But like, whatever. Say the miracle happens, the 1% chance they turn it around and they get to the playoffs and they get stomped in the wild card round, whatever it ends up looking like, right? But I'm at the point now where I have to believe it to see it. Whoever they hire as head coach, whoever they hire as GM, there will be hires that I like, hires that I don't like, but I am not going to be in a position again where I'm like super giddy about the team until I see them win a playoff game and they get over that hump.
I've said that, JC, they got to find their Bill Zito. They got to find the guy to run the organization, that domino decision. That's Stephen Ross's biggest assignment here. We read the list of coaches and GMs. They got to find the Bill Zito. We didn't know who Bill Zito was till Bill Zito was Bill Zito. He was a player agent. He was, a lot of things. He wasn't even on the personnel side. So they got to find the right VP. And then you'll know. I think you'll know, Dante, when you find that guy and then they make these deals. I always go back to the Panthers season when they were really good, offensive explosion, like the 23 Dolphins. And they got bounced in the second round. They traded Huberdeau, fired their coach. He knew it wasn't good enough because our ultimate goal, our expectations were high, and he knew that team wouldn't work.
So it's funny you bring that up because my podcast co-host, Aled, is obsessed with that.
Oh, he is? Yeah.
The difference of that trade and how that shows the Panthers recognizing that the speed finesse game was not going to get it done and they had to get tougher. And I remember feeling that way about the Miami Dolphins at the end of 2023 season and being like, you guys got to throw another pitch. And they did not. They were like, what if we got more small people who run fast? And now they're 1-4 losing to the Panthers.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the truth. It's having conviction, having foresight, power moves. You'll know. Guys, you'll know when we get the right GM. You'll know when they make decisions that not only pay off, but you'll know at the time, kind of. But anyways, we're gonna wrap it up here. But we'll get the final score prediction. We'll save that to the end. But Jason, we're gonna have a new thing at the end of the show. Tell them about it. We'll pull up one question today. But go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, no, we love the chat. We love your questions. So we're going to focus in on the last couple of minutes of the show to highlight a question, and we'll discuss it. And you know what? We'll see what happens in the chat. But we appreciate everybody who wants to put some input in there. And yes, this is a juicy one. So George, without further ado.
Yeah, Dante, any freaking truth to Rex Ryan being considered as our future coach? Read that somewhere today, and I almost puked.
Yeah, I hope not. I would also puke. Would be a terrible decision. I'll get out ahead of this too, and I said this on the All Dolphins podcast. I am not even remotely interested in John Gruden either.
Same.
So I could do without the analyst to coach pipeline. I'd like to hire a serious person who's coaching football right now as like a base level. I know that's a tough ask in today's climate, but no Rex Ryan, please. Yeah, thank you.
I think people like I think they're liking the idea of the Gruden thing, but at the actual when they put it in place, I'm not a fan of. Gruden's do good at what he's doing right now on television, right? You know what else I'm tired of? Go ahead, Dante. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, the thing with Gruden is, like, he hasn't won anything in forever. Like, what accomplishment are you looking at here?
He loves veteran guys.
I get it. I understand. His last winning season that was not 9-7, which was kind of the base your mediocre record, was 11-5 in 2005 with Tampa Bay. Wow. His only other winning seasons are 2 9-7 seasons with the Buccaneers in 2007 and 2008. What is appealing about that? To me, nothing. He won a Super Bowl when I was a toddler. I couldn't speak. The man was winning Super Bowls, and I'm not trying to take that away from him, but like, I have no desire to see him coach my football team in the year of our Lord, 2026. I just no desire.
I'll let you chime in on this, Jason, but real quick, you know what else I'm tired of? Like, let's not just do the opposite of what we have. I think we have a problem of doing that. We had the players coach. Now we're going to go to the ultimate disciplinarian. Find the best candidate, man. You don't have to go the total opposite of what you had. I think we do this game. Oh, okay. We had the offensive coordinator. Let's go defensive coordinator. We had the soft coach. How about find the guy who has a little bit of everything? Find the right guy. And Jason, go ahead.
It's a very complicated scenario because I think you have to find the right guy to then find the right guy. Meaning that if you do this, Ross has to say, all right, I'm going to bring in this general manager / president of football operations, literally give him the keys, turn him into the Eric Bischoff of you just need an open checkbook. He is the king and the Lord without anybody in his ear, complete and utter autonomy. And then I would literally, if that happens and you know that that's the guy, I would defer to his decision. If it's a college coach, if it's a hot coordinator like Joe Brady, if it's someone who used to be a head coach in this league, I get what you're saying. And thank you for making me feel so old. I was on my first job out of college when you were 5 years old. That makes
I'm right
me
there
feel
with
awful.
you, Sonny. I'm right there with you.
But the fact is, I would love for a guy with conviction to be like, it's on me. I'm going to pick this coach, and let's just hope that it's the right coach. But
don't look back.
And don't look back. So
keep going forward.
Whether that's Gruden, Bill Belichick, Brady.
No, please.
I know. I'm just naming names here.
Don't even do that.
I'm naming names here.
Boy, life without Brady is not easy, huh?
Rex Ryan, I'm off of that train. Yeah. So
no. Let's get the right guy. I mean, and before we get to, let's read. I want to read you the Dolphins' record since 2009: 7-9, 7-9, 6-10, 7-9, 8-8, 8-8. 6-10, 10-6, 6-10, 7-9, 5-11, 10-6, 9-8, 9-8, 11-6, 8-9, or 1. No wonder we're losing. The merry-go-round of mediocrity, man. How is this going to end? Will it end this Sunday? All right, score prediction, Jason Sarney.
Oh boy, we're going to have fun with this one. I do think it's ultimately going to be a loss. And I think it's good. And I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to call it 31-17 as I did on the Fins TV podcast with Sammy and the bunch yesterday. Yeah. I'm going to stick to it.
I'll go. Dante will save you for last. I'll go. Man, guys, I don't know. I have this funny feeling that they could win this game. I picked him in our Pick'em league that Sammy's in. I'll go Chargers, but it's 24-21. but if it's I can see it going the other way. I just think this is a lot closer than people think. I don't know. I got Dante.
Well, you stole my answer, so
Oh,
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Chargers 27, Dolphins 24. I think it's gonna be close. I really do. I just man, I just don't have much faith in the Dolphins. I think they can win the game. I really do. I think that they'll be competitive. I think they can win, but I don't have a lot of faith in them. I'm not going to pick them. I just can't do it.
I agree, but I get the sense it's going to be closer than people think. I think the Chargers pass rush, and I'll get into this Saturday when we do our countdown to game day with Curtis, but the Chargers offensive line the last 3 weeks, their pass protection has been horrible with their injuries. To me, the question is, can the Dolphins get actually the pass rush juice going? And can the Chargers run the ball? Can we run? Everything starts with the running game for the Dolphins. They're ranked both on both sides and everything. But,
if you can't get right this game with the injuries, all the more reason.
We might have a lunchtime special show on Friday. We're working on that with somebody who had a report about a certain front office in the Dolphins. So we'll hold off on that. We'll stay tuned for our social media, of course. We'll be live on Saturday morning, Curtis and I at 10:30. Make sure you check out that. We preview the game. And then Sunday we'll be live, not after the game because I'll be at the game, probably sometime in the evening around 7 or 8. Stay tuned to that. Man, Dante, thank you for staying so long with this. We had a blast. I love your work. Dante, you're one of the most knowledgeable guys out there. You know, when I first started this channel, Dante was one of the first guys I reached out to. So thank you so much for joining us. And let everybody know where they can find you, what you're working on, and all the good stuff.
Yeah, so if you're a Dolphins fan, check out Dolphins on SI. We do free content, usually 5 to 7 stories a day. We cover everything. I have all my film breakdowns there. If you're an all 22 head and you like watching that stuff, I do all that stuff for us. And then also check out A to Z Sports. Our Dolphins writer is Kyle Krabs, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. Yep. He does a phenomenal job. And we also cover the entire NFL. All of our beat reporters do a really good job. So check out Dolphins on SI, go to A to Z Sports, and then you can watch me as well on the All Dolphins podcast. We usually do it about an hour after the game. You can watch me lose my mind in real time like I did last week. It's a good time.
So it sets up perfect. Usually we're live right after the game. Watch us, then jump on over an hour later and watch Dante and Alan. We have a lot of the A to Z Sports guys on. I've had Ryan Roberts on a bunch. You know, we
Ryan's
had
great.
Sophie, who covers the not Sophie. Was it Sophie? No, Destin, who covers the
He
Colts.
covers the Colts. Yeah. Destin's great. Yeah.
We got to get Kyle on here, though, Jay. We got to work on that. But thank you guys so much for Jason, for Dante, for myself, guys. As always, stay safe and fins up. We are out.